Okay, this is part 2 of chapter 11 on self-efficacy, and one of the focuses of this textbook, not just this chapter, but you've seen this over and over by Woolfolk, is the concept of teacher's sense of self-efficacy. And so this is a teacher's belief that they can reach every student, even the difficult ones, even the ones who are a challenge to teach and to motivate. And so this is a personal characteristic of a teacher that will predict student achievement. So this is a issue in education that we want to make sure that teachers, especially teachers who are in teacher education programs in college, just like you, are highly efficacious in their ability to teach. Otherwise, there will be quite a bit of disgruntlement with the profession, excuse me, even some burnout. And so this is why it's such a big aspect of education, about how a teacher feels about their ability to educate and to be a teacher. And so a teacher with high self-efficacy is going to be one that takes a lot of responsibility for the students under their care. And for teachers that have high self-efficacy, they tend to take more intentional approaches. They tend to measure their success in meeting their students' needs. They take a lot of responsibility for the learning of their students. They have greater job satisfaction. They're more committed. They're less likely to burn out of the industry. And so we don't want to get teachers in the industry that are disgruntled and they burn out and they quit. That's the last thing we want for any of our teachers, especially. And of course, for our Christian teachers who get into the industry, we need them to last. And so self-efficacy is a real issue for us to explore and understand. So teachers with high self-efficacy tend to be very optimistic. They set high goals for their students. They have high expectations for their students. They set really high learning goals. They work hard. They help students learn overall. Of course, all teachers believe they're there to do that, but highly efficacious teachers have that as part of their skill set. And so for new teachers, there's a danger in overrating their ability to graduate from college and think they know everything. Not that any of our students have ever done that, but many college graduates would think that they know all there is to know, and so they underprepare for the profession. That can be a real dangerous aspect. And so there are several various factors of developing teacher self-efficacy while you're new in the industry and new in the profession. And of course, these go back to the four major concepts of self-efficacy: mastery, abilities, vicarious experiences. All those aspects come into play. So for a new teacher, mastery of content knowledge and developing personal instructional techniques is a big deal. You want to know your content. But more than that, you want to be a good communicator and be someone who can develop what works and what doesn't work in their teaching style. Vicarious experiences. You can go observe other teachers. You can watch what they're doing. You can go to seminars and learn about what other teachers are doing to make yourself a better teacher. Seeing them successful will help you understand that you can be successful too. There are many sources of social feedback. Getting peer or supervisor feedback on your work, being observed, comparing yourself with others, and even asking for feedback from your students and their parents. So those social sources of feedback are a big deal when it comes to efficacy as well. I want to talk to you real quick about an instrument that is very common in education. That's the teacher sense of self-efficacy, the TSES, the teacher sense of self-efficacy scale. And what I want to do is I want to show that to you here real quick. This is actually the instrument. This is a research-based instrument. This would be similar to one that you might use in a research study proposal. In fact, you're going to see this again, I guarantee it. Before the end of this class, you will be interacting with this scale. This is going to be part of your final exam. And so you don't have to have it memorized or anything. It just could be an aspect of your exam. But this is the teacher sense of self-efficacy scale. So an educator or teacher would go through. Here's some of the questions. How much can you do to get through to the most difficult students? And you scale this. It's a 9-point Likert scale. And you go through and then you would score this up. And there's even a short form. This long form has 24 questions. There's a shorter version that has just 12. And so this is the teacher sense of self-efficacy scale. So their ideas about how they perceive themselves to be as a teacher, how how much control they have. Here's one: how much can you do to calm a student who is disruptive or noisy? How much can you do to get children to follow classroom rules? So this measures how a teacher feels about their ability to be a good teacher. I will point out here on this instrument that one of the developers is our textbook author, Anita Woolfolk. She's from the Ohio State University, and so you're using a textbook by a highly regarded author in the education industry, Woolfolk. She's one of the developers of this instrument. There's her name again. And this is a instrument that is highly respected in the education industry. So we'll be talking about that again more. I'll post a link to this instrument in the announcements, and we'll take a look at that again. That's going to be part of your final exam. So it'll benefit you just to glance at that and take a look at that. But that scale is one that's used widely in education. So let's say that you're a teacher and you're trying to teach students how to do something, and the connection that you can make to, for example, teaching children how to make a paper airplane. This is when we have a normal class setting. I do this as a class activity, teaching an audience or a group of people to build a paper airplane. Well, one way to increase your self-efficacy is to have a lot of mastery experiences, to get lots of experience in practicing, to know your content well, to increase your own abilities, to get a lot of hands-on exposure to that content, whatever it may be, whether it's making paper airplanes or teaching algebra. Mastery experiences can't be minimized. Vicarious experiences, observing other teachers, other leaders, social persuasion, getting some feedback, getting some encouragement. This is why we have teacher education conventions, so that educators can go and get some feedback, they can get advice, they can get encouragement. And that's a big part of teaching, because you feel like sometimes you're an island unto yourself. You're surrounded by young people all day. And to have the social interaction of your peers and other adults is a big aspect of teaching. And then the physiological or affective arousal. What are some techniques that you might employ as a teacher to calm your nerves or to burn off some stress? I can get a lot of sleep and maybe get some exercise to have better energy, to have excitement for my teaching role. And so no one wants to learn from a teacher who's, boring and uninteresting. Well, a lot of that has to do with how you're handling your life and your lifestyle leading up to teaching. So that's the physiological aspect of self-efficacy. Now, as we look at a couple of aspects of the teacher and things that can help or hurt self-efficacy, teacher stress is a big one. This is a huge area of concern in our profession, because there's a high percentage of teachers that burn out. I actually wrote and published an article on teacher burnout this year in a Christian educator magazine, and I'll put a link to that. You might find that interesting. But a lot of teachers burn out of our industry. That's harmful to the teaching industry. This is why we have so many teacher openings across America, because we have so many teachers who just get stressed out and they get burned out and they leave the profession. And so stress management is a big aspect of being a good teacher. And there's many things that can cause stress: students misbehaving, challenges with your colleagues at work, lots and lots of different responsibilities. A teacher has classes to teach. They have additional responsibilities. They have recess duty and lunchroom duty and morning care duty and after school care duty, and parents to deal with, all sorts of different pressures. A very broad scope of pressures when it comes to teaching. And so just some practical ideas for helpful ideas, focusing your emotional resources on what is in front of you instead of what is coming or what is behind. You got to learn to manage your emotions well, and to be compassionate in the moment that you're in. Get rid of unnecessary expectations or biases or what you think of the teaching profession. Just be the best teacher you can be. Develop some compassion for others. And then the last one here I'll mention is understanding the effect of neuroticism. Neuroticism is the tendency for things to get under our skin and to stay there. And this is what causes most teachers to burn out of the industry, is that idea of neuroticism, is that they just can't let things go. That article I mentioned a minute ago that I wrote has to do with neuroticism, and you might find that interesting in that that's the reason why many teachers burn out of the industry. Bandura talks about a concept called triadic reciprocal causality. And this is the system that's in play within the teaching environment, within the classroom. And the three things that he exposes are personal factors, the physical and social environment, and behavior. And so those three influences, those three things working together will cause a system in the classroom that can either increase or decrease learning. Personal factors will affect the physical, the social environment, which will affect behavior, which will turn around and affect those personal factors again. And so those three influences, the personal factors have to do with our beliefs, expectations, our motivation, our attitudes, our knowledge, things about a person. The physical and social environment, of course, deals with the resources, consequences, behaviors, other people, the physical settings, the physical classroom. And then behaviors, those actions of young people or of ourselves, the choices they make, the verbal statements they make. So all those influences, all those are influencing each other. And so it tends to perpetuate a cycle of events. Maybe a teacher communicates expectations to the students. The students either they meet those expectations or they don't. Those expectations affect the student's confidence for sure. And then that confidence will ultimately affect students' learning and their achievement. Here's an illustration of how that kind of works. Let's say that, as an example, a student comes to your class and they're late for whatever reason. Maybe they have a legitimate excuse, maybe they don't. But the teacher is in the middle of teaching, the class has been disrupted. So the teacher has a negative reaction to the student's behavior. Perhaps they assume the worst, or they start to look at them with some pessimism as to why they were late, what they were doing, were they out there playing, what were they doing? Well, the student can feel insulted when they see that negative response from the teacher. And so, likewise, the teacher can develop low expectations for that student. They can start believing this student is a clown, they're just goofing off, they're not taking class seriously, when really the student being late may have been a legitimate reason. But you see how that perception can affect how now the teacher is perceiving that student. They start developing lower expectations. Well, the student starts to sense that distrust and they lose interest in learning. They don't want to try. They're let down, or they are disappointed in their teacher. So that's going to affect their effort in class. So then that teacher sees that low effort and they say, well, fine, I'm not going to invest time in you. I'm not going to invest extra effort in you. We've talked about this in EdPsych before. This is called the Pygmalion effect, where a teacher gets what they expect. And the teacher starts to see low effort and they expect to get less from the student. And sure enough, they do. The student's achievement is ultimately affected. And so in this triadic reciprocal causality, Bandera is pointing out that there's a lot that has to do with self-efficacy and the teacher-student relationship that will ultimately lead and affect student learning. And that is ultimately why we're studying what we're studying, is because we want to impact and influence student learning and making sure that students learn all that they can and should at the hands of us who are their teachers. So there's a couple of the important aspects of Chapter 11. Again, obviously not everything there. That's just a quick overview of some important pieces. And take a look at some of the other things that I'm posting in the announcements, and that will help you as you understand and relate to the content in Chapter 11.